Hey guys, welcome back to Ben & Brewing's channel. For those of you who have not been here before, we do product reviews, tutorials, and we have a live chat feature on our website to help you through Brew Day 911s. Today's video, we're doing a recap of a brew day we did, kind of a grain to glass, if you will. We're going to run through the recipe and talk about the beer flavorings. Let's get into it. Alright guys, today we are joined as usual, Christy of the famed Brew Crew. We're also joined by Vexette. Check out his YouTube channel if you haven't already. Today's video, we actually brewed a couple of weeks ago. Gosh, maybe it was a month ago or so. We did up an English bitter, and we wanted to kind of show you through that and maybe do a little bit of a tasting today. So start with, we'll just talk about the brew day and kind of give you the recipe. So it was actually a beautiful day when we brewed. We got a lot of really cool footage of the brew day itself, which was kind of a lot of fun. And I think that was actually your first real brew day,
yeah,
kind of a full brew day to be a part of. Time. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
One of my friends, Nick, came along and he absolutely loved it.
Oh, he had a blast. He was a big help too. So that was good. So an English bitter, let's talk about the style here real quick. So it typically is a very sessionable beer, usually a low hop profile presence. And I'm just prepping you for when we taste it in a little bit. Usually can have sort of a diacetyl flavoring to it, tends to be a little more present. Like I said, the hop presence really isn't much of anything. It should be very light, very sessionable, with a kind of a moderate hop presence. So let's break down the recipe. So it was actually a very, very simple 5-gallon batch that we did. We started out with 12 pounds of 2-row, and we did a UK 2-row for this because it is English. So 8 ounces of caramel crystal malt, and the crystal we did was a crystal 20. And then 4 ounces of a crystal 120, and so that was to kind of help give it some residual sweetness, a little bit of a maltier backbone so it wouldn't be too dry, and to kind of hold up somewhat against the hops. As far as the hop additions, it was actually only 2. We did 2 ounces of East Kent Golding for the full 60-minute boil, and then we did a 5-minute addition of the East Kent Goldings, about right at flame out actually. So right when we killed the burner, we threw in another, what did I say, ounce of hops. And kind of let it carry through. We chilled it like we normally do. The mash, talked about the mash, we mashed it at a 152 to kind of give it a little bit drier of a finish. We didn't want it to be too sweet because it is an English bitter. We want it to be sessionable and something that you want to come back for. And the mash actually went through really without much of an issue. As far as fermentation, we did it for about 2 weeks at 68 degrees. The yeast we used was the Safale SO4, which is an English style. Now we did do 2 packs of the dried yeast, and I did that just to make sure it was going to be very, very clean. I didn't want too much of the ester profile by under pitching, so I did a little bit of an over pitch to kind of clean it up a little bit. So we'll kind of see how that comes through. You guys ready to taste it?
Oh, 100%.
Of course.
Oh yeah? So the color came out, actually has a nice little redness to it. It's relatively clear. I didn't actually put any fining agents in the fermenter or even post because you can really kind of have that drop out.
It does remind me going to the apple patch.
It should have diacetyl, which is kind of somewhat of a buttery, less fruity. Acetaldehyde is the fruity, kind of the apple flavor. So that really should be minimal.
I think it's smooth.
It's really good. I like it.
I think it does have a bit of a green apple flavor to it, and it's not because of age. Sometimes your beers can come out a little bit kind of greener because it hasn't had a chance to clean it up. This has been aging for a couple of weeks now, so that should be past the green apple stage. We'll have to go back and do kind of a dissection of the recipe. Not the recipe, maybe the brew day, to figure out what happened. It had to be something in fermentation. That's the only thing I can think of.
But
because
maybe, as JB said, we can rebrew it and do it again.
we should definitely rebrew it, but I want to figure out what happened in the fermentation that caused it to be so dominant. I'll have to go back and look at the logs. Maybe I dropped temperature too soon, dropped the yeast out of suspension too fast, and put them to sleep before they had a chance to really clean out. This will be a to be continued, and we want to keep things honest with it because we're not perfect. We brew beers, and we brew a lot of really good beers, but we have those batches sometimes that are kind of a mystery. This was a new recipe for us, not a new style for us, or not a new style, a new process for us because it's an ale. Those are relatively simple. So we'll go back to the drawing board, and we'll probably have a follow-up to figure out what was missed. All right, guys, we are back. It has been several weeks. We have rebrewed the ESB, and we're going to talk about that and do a little bit of tasting today. As you can see, we're kind of in a different spot today. We're actually in the tasting room and using it for what it's designed for, tasting beer. So, thank you guys for coming back. I appreciate it. Sorry to subject you to the first round of the beer. Let's start off with a refresher, in case you need it, of what this was like. So, cheers. Thank you for suffering through the
No, it's good.
beer.
It really doesn't taste bad.
It's
feel like it's a little lighter than before.
Right. It's still green apple though. Very strong. All right, so this is the rebrew, and I'm going to talk about what we did differently this time. And I actually, a couple things to note with it. In our original tasting, you could see it was relatively cloudy. I actually clarified this up like crazy.
So
I did put a clarifier in it this time, again, trying to eliminate any of the variables that were causing that issue. And so that green apple flavor, that acetaldehyde, can be caused by a couple different factors. Oxygenation can cause that. Infection can cause it. Not having enough oxygen in your wort can cause it because the yeast are having to work a little bit harder. So I actually tackled it in a couple different ways. So let's start by tasting it. Give you guys' honest impression.
Yay.
I appreciate it. Cheers. This one definitely looks a little more appetizing, as clear as it is.
So nice. The color is really nice.
Oh, really nice. It's way cleaner.
Oh,
Like you wouldn't even know it was the same beer.
I can't believe it's the same beer
You know,
at all. It's really good.
Super light.
very smooth. It does have a good crispness to it.
Yeah.
Which one did you prefer? The
But this one's
the
better.
fall beer? Yeah.
The fall beer.
You were very complimentary. I appreciate that. That came out much better. Yeah. There's not a big hop presence in it. Shouldn't be, right? It should be crisp and sessionable. Has just a little bit of malty without it being sweet.
Right. Well, that maltiness is what you want out of the ESB too.
Right.
And I think for me, I have been so used to just drinking one style of beer. I had to refresh my memory on what an ESB actually tastes like. And stuff like tastes like this.
Yes. No, it
It's
came
really
out
good.
much better. So definitely a good learning. And I think as brewers, especially when you've been brewing for a while, sometimes you can lapse into being a little careless or maybe taking some shortcuts. And not that I took any shortcuts with that first beer, but I think I probably wasn't as careful as I could have been. So to get this thing cleaned up, a couple things that I did. For one, I actually fermented under pressure this time, about 5 psi of pressure. Normally, when you're doing pressure, you want 1 bar, about 15 psi. I just kind of held it at 5, just to help suppress some of those yeast esters. I made sure that we're putting plenty of oxygen in it. The last beer that we did, we have an inline oxygen stone that we put into, break some glass, that we put into inline as we're chilling it, right? And I thought that maybe that stone was clogged because I've used it a bunch of times and I haven't really reboiled it. It's clean, it's sanitary, but those pores get clogged, and I think maybe it wasn't injecting oxygen. So this time I actually used a different oxygen stone to make sure we're getting plenty of oxygen in there, which I think helps with the yeast. And the final thing I did is I took it out of the normal fermenter that we use. It's a German-style 15-gallon Speedo fermenter. And we're only doing a 5-gallon batch, so it didn't make sense to do that again. That thing's got to be 10 years old. I got a feeling it's near its end of its life, and that might have contributed to that acetaldehyde. Possibly a little bit of an infection in there. I mean, it wasn't bad initially. So instead, we pressure fermented it in a stainless keg, which the way we take care of our kegs in stainless, I mean, those things last forever, and so it was a very, very clean environment. There was no oxygen pickup when we transferred it from the fermentation keg into the actual keg, which can cause some of those off flavors. So I hit it a bunch of different ways. I'm not sure exactly which one, or multiple ones, was the issue with this prior beer, but I feel like we got it nailed down.
I think the fermenter could definitely be the issue though, because I feel like we brew it quite a bit, and every time we brew, it hasn't been quite this big of
Not
an
that bad,
impact, but I feel like every beer we rebrew, which are usually our staples, and there's like something slightly off.
They've been
each
just a
time.
little bit off every time, and now that you mentioned that, I think you're right. I think maybe it's time to replace the fermenter itself, because plastic fermenters don't last forever. There's only so much you can do to clean them. You can't really scrub them too hard because you'll end up scratching the plastic, and that just kills them. So I think maybe this has been something that's been brewing. Yeah. Nailed it. Been brewing for a while, and I think it's time we probably need to look into investing into a different fermenter. I'll probably go stainless, just depending on what it is. But overall, I think it came out good.
Really good.
I'm actually happy. That last beer was embarrassing. It really, it humbles you when you do something like that. But so I'm super happy this came out so clean.
Yes.
And we were able to kind of fix the issues. And it was a good recipe, so I couldn't fault the recipe. Couldn't really necessarily fault the brew day process 100%. It was really just about that fermentation and setting it up for a healthy fermentation. Well, I appreciate you guys again helping me out with the tasting, and hopefully you guys learned something from kind of our mistakes as well. Thank you so much, guys. Take care, my friends.